Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU podcast. This is episode 145. We're coming at you live on a Tuesday night. Paul, how's it going?
Andre, I'm great, man. Did you just see how the Padres dominated in the first playoff game? And meanwhile, the Dodgers are just sitting there marinating, getting lazy, just getting ripe for the upset this weekend.
I wouldn't even call it an upset. I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres were favored in the DS.
Oh, really?
I mean, they had the best record in the second half of the season.
They absolutely did. But they're the number one seed overall, though. Whatever the right thing is, I agree. I think it's going to be a hell of a series if the Padres can get back. And Kevin Wilson coming with the absolute greatest comment. He's absolutely right. King was filthy. Like, I know, we're not supposed to be talking about the Padres, but King was filthy. I mean, this whole year was like, did the Padres do the right thing with the Juan Soto trade? Tonight, for one night, the Padres won that trade. I mean, he was lights out. He was unbelievable. The strikeouts, second most in Padres history. So it was great. It's good, Andre. I mean, as a Padre fan, man, it's good. I know you'd rather see the Braves.
Anybody would rather see the Braves.
That's true.
I mean, I look at their lineup and look at they're a good team. I mean, I think Max Fried pitching tomorrow?
I haven't seen the probables.
I mean, you would think that he would be a formidable,
sure,
at least better than the guy they trotted out today as a starter that I'd never heard of.
Oh man, 21-year-old. Oh man, And then how about that moonshot?
That was an interesting swing.
It was. I honestly, when he hit it, I thought that like Tatis's initial reaction was that he was angry that he didn't hit a home run because I just thought he popped it up, and it just, it was nuts. It was great. But we're here for we're here moving on for the Aztecs though, man. So let's talk a little bit about Central Michigan. Let's recap that. You need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I was on another time. I was 8 hours ahead in Europe, and I watched it on my phone. It was a promising start. I think the two things that we had taken away from the first 3 games of the season were obviously scoring points, but specifically the offense in the first half and penalties. For at least the first half, they seem to have righted the ship, right? 3 touchdowns, 21 points in the first half, after only scoring 10 points total in the prior 2 games. 0 penalties in the first half. Deshaun McEwen got called for a personal foul at the end of the half, but since it was offsetting, it didn't actually get credited to the team. And then he got ejected and then come back. That was strange. I've never seen that, where someone actually walked to the locker room.
Right.
And I was wondering whether he would actually come back out because it was about to be halftime.
Right.
So he got his steps in definitely at that time. But I think the frustrating part was the second half. You don't score any points. You have definitely opportunities for more points, whether it was returning turnovers that the defense got that they couldn't score or got called back. And then obviously in the red zone, missed field goals. Obviously loomed large. Some maybe coaching decisions that some people can debate and criticize, looking back on it. But I think overall it was a frustrating loss. They did enough things to win the game, but not enough, unfortunately, to lose by 1 on a last-second field goal. You were there. What was the atmosphere like, and what did you take away from that game?
It was a cool atmosphere. I mean, I think that as just kind of the way everything in society is. We tend to like size and conglomerates and big news media groups and stuff like that. But Central Michigan does it right, man. They have their traditions. Their band is really cool. The way that the layout is of the stadium and the way, the different tailgate areas and all that kind of stuff. And then there was a good crowd. There was a good crowd. The home side was completely full, a little bit empty on the visitor side. But it was a good atmosphere. I think there's a lot of takeaways, a lot of things that you could do and you could, point to, and I think probably we should discuss all of them. But as far as the coaching decisions, I think that if you buy the idea that coaches, like, their job is to make sure that their teams are in position to win, it's challenging to kind of find fault with either coach. I think both teams were in a position to win. Obviously, the field goal kicking, Nick Lopez did not make the plays that were needed, but he was in position to do it. It wasn't like he wasn't set up. And then I think the flip side of it is that the way in which Jim McElwain, the way he, played kind of conservative, and he didn't push the envelope, and he kept trying to win field position. Well, at the very, very end, it's 4th and 7. And if the Aztecs get off the field, they're going to win the game anyway. And, his quarterback, Joe Lavis, is able to find, across the middle, in between 3 guys that I'm sure, people like Owen Chambliss for the Aztecs is going to remember for a long time, where he just couldn't quite get his hand on the ball. And it was just that tight window that he got it in. They got the first down, and then they made the field goal. I mean, so I think you have some opportunities to be able to do different things. And so I think that's one part of it. I think, in the article that I wrote as a kind of a follow-up to the game, it's every week you could talk about Danny O'Neil, the progress of the offense. And obviously he was coming back. And part of me didn't want to write about Danny O'Neil. But I think with everything that's taken place with the Pac-12, I think it really comes down to, will Danny O'Neil or somebody else, whether it's a transfer or somebody else who's on the roster already, will that person become a great quarterback? And if the answer is yes, then I think they can move to the Pac-12 and they can compete, and they can even be in a position to win the Pac-12. And so then in that light, that they need that position to be so good, what did you see from the QB? And, I think the jury's still out. For me, there was a lot of conversation that article started, which is always great to be talking Aztec football under any capacity. Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I think the jury's still out. Anybody who has made up their mind one way or another, I haven't seen enough to be able to know. I think I've seen a lot of positives that suggest that, this guy's doing things that we haven't seen Aztec quarterbacks do in a long time. Flip side of it is the offense is in such a way where he's not really doing much more outside of just doing the design of the offense and making those plays that those guys. But the flip side of it is, again, keep going on it. I mean, this is start number 3. Would you really have expected that from him? And what does that mean that he does look like he looks like an advanced true freshman playing the position? I think that's fair. But what does that mean? What does that mean, and how does that project as they go forward?
Yeah, it's hard to say after 3 games, 3 starts for a true freshman. And I get your commentary around that offense needing a quarterback that can scare the defense with his runs. Mm-hmm. And maybe Danny O'Neil, that is not a strength. But you can build around that, right? You can figure out the offense to best suit your quarterback as well. And I think in the first half they did that. The running game wasn't really working very well. You take away the 40-something run that Marquez Cooper had. I mean, I think the rest of the game he only had 60 yards on. I think you had the stats in your article. It was like
he had 33 carries for 1.9 yards per carry, aside from that 147-yarder. Yep.
And so, they were still able to put some points up regardless, even without being able to run the ball. I think they actually should have thrown the ball more in the game. And I'm not just talking about the last drive of the game that you can question the decision making, right? Everyone wants to look back at it and go, in hindsight, it didn't work, so you should have done something different, right? I like to think about it like, what would I have done while I'm watching that game, what am I saying we should do, right? What I would do anyway, and what the coaching should do. And I running the ball 3 times was not the best idea there. I will that's what I would say. And coming into that drive, that's how I felt. Based on the running game wasn't working. Your kicker just missed a 33-yard field goal. Um, you want to put that game away with a touchdown, make it a 9-point game. Even with a field goal, they don't have a chance to win the game. And I thought that was a missed opportunity there. Now, the same people that were criticizing not passing the ball, if you pass the ball and you get incompletions, and Central Michigan then keeps their timeouts and uses their timeouts to win the game, then guess what? Those people are going to say you should have ran the ball, made them use their timeouts, so they didn't have timeouts at the end. So, it's hindsight is 2020 to a lot of people. But in that situation, I think passing the ball at least once, maybe twice, would have been the better play. Now, if Lopez makes the kick and the defense holds up, obviously a field goal would not have been. Central Michigan would have needed a touchdown, and so you could win the game there. So it's obviously you're also talking about a field goal kicker that needs to make the kick, but I do. Yeah, as I said, the decisions are made, but the game. There were so many opportunities, right? If Bryce Phillips is returning an interception, if the quarterback gets blocked, he scores. You're up 9, and the game's probably over.
Yep.
Right? It's just the little things like that, like I'm. In my opinion, I think coaches get way too much of the blame and way too much credit when things go bad and things go right. Like to me, I think especially in football, players decide the outcome of the game, and you can say, well, a field goal kicker could have helped win the game by making 2 easy field goals, or if a defensive player blocks the quarterback and they score a touchdown, that wins the game, right? And you can say the same for Central Michigan on their side. That's how things happen. But I do think there were coaching things that the coach's decision making, play calling could have helped the team win the game in this one. Now, I'm not going off a ledge of Sean Lewis is bad coach and shouldn't have been hired. I'm not saying that, but I think there is some valid criticism on some decision making and some plays in that game that you could look back on. But I'm sure he's the more critical of himself than any of us are, and I think he realizes that. But I think players usually win these games by their plays, but I think the coaches can sometimes make some play calls or decisions that doesn't necessarily. And I think running it out 3 times on that last drive was not the smart play. Now they could have ran it, and Cooper could have scored a touchdown, and then you could say, well, yeah, they made a smart play. I think the other thing I did notice, and Kevin Wilson astutely points out, at the end of the first half, I think they just ran the ball once and let the clock run out. When you have a chance, try to make a play downfield, and if it doesn't work, then you run it out. But I think I've been a little bit surprised with how you have a true freshman quarterback, but some of the conservative, like early in the season, he went for a lot of 4th downs. So you thought that he was had this riverboat gambler persona, right? Like Ron Rivera got that nickname in the NFL for going for a 4th down. But I think it was a little bit conservative in this game. You could have a quarterback that's a true freshman. He just came back from injury, but all in all, I think they had the chance to win the game, whether it was quarterbacks, whether it was coaches or players. They lost by 1 point, and it's still a loss.
Yeah, and the way I view it is more along the lines of saying, like, I don't think that there's one best way to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, like, in the scope of everything that went on, there's probably 5 right ways to handle it, and there's probably 5 wrong ways to handle it. And I would say the way that they handled it was one of the 5 right ways. And if he had chosen to, do a play action and try to throw the ball, yeah, that would have been the right thing to do too. So I don't think that you're wrong. But I think you brought up a lot of points. The interception, man, the part that it was Dominic Oliver who was engaged with Joe Labas, the QB. And I just wonder if the emphasis on penalties is what made him not block the guy. Because you remember a pick six got taken back because they were a little bit too aggressive. And they made that like a real point of emphasis throughout the week. And I wonder if they went to the other side and he didn't just bury the quarterback like clearly a defensive end can do. And it ended up costing them, and credit to Labas. I mean, that goes to what you said about them making plays. He made a play there, and that ultimately gave them a chance to be able to win the game, which they did. And then I think the other part that you said that was interesting to me is the way in which is how like conservative he was. And we talked to him about this multiple times, and we said, tell us about what has evolved for you as a head coach that maybe now that you didn't know then. And he said, I'm a different game manager. He said, before I would always just try to outscore people. And now I think that's part of that evolution of like who he is as a person, is trying to figure out, as a coach, I should say, like exactly what it is that he wants to do. And then of course, I talked to him after the game and I asked him exactly what you just asked. And I said, hey, you had 6 opportunities inside of the 15-yard line, and you ran the ball 5 times and you passed it once. But why? What was your rationale there? And he said exactly what you said. He said, I thought that this is all about players making plays, and I thought Cooper could make a play for us. And that's what I was hoping that would happen. And then he said, I was trying to set up the field goal the second time, which again, I mean, obviously they made the wrong call in having Nick Lopez be the field goal kicker out of, the inconsistency that they've seen and been very vocal and open about. But I mean, that's the reason we're talking about this, right? They would be at a Hail Mary, maybe moving a little bit different. Who knows if they score a touchdown, whatever. And we're talking about the late touchdown that they gave up. But, it's hard for me to fault somebody for trying to kick a 27-yard field goal. Right? It just is. It's such a you have to be able to make that to be a Division I kicker. There was one about Cooper, and I love to talk about this too. Kevin says that Cooper hasn't been impressive. Andre, I know you're older, so TBH means to be honest. Just throw that out there.
I'm not older than you.
No, I know it's a bad joke, bro. I'm just trying. Here's my thing. I'll be honest with you. I was very impressed with what Cooper did. I think that there's a lot of running backs that would have not gotten what he got. I don't know why as you said, they could have passed the ball more, and maybe that would have, helped a little bit. But Central Michigan, they rarely cared about any of the play actions, about any of the RPO stuff. They were going to stop the run, and they made San Diego State one-dimensional. The one time that I remember anyway, where they didn't do that, as I explained in my article, was when they ran a little bit of like a swing pass kind of thing to across the formation to Jay-Sean Pope, and it forced the defensive end to stay home.
Yeah.
And they were 5, and the line was 5-on-5. They blocked everybody. Cooper wasn't touched until about the 10, and he just burst through about the first down marker, and then he just burst through. And it's just the way that it is. 5 guys can't block 6.5. They just can't. And they were willing to let San Diego State try as many deep balls as they wanted. They were willing to just anything but Cooper beating them. And you could say that they shouldn't have ran the ball so much and set up a lot of those 3rd and longs, which is what happened as time went on. And I would agree with you. I think if you're going to, put a quarterback in there who clearly does not have the ability to run, and I don't know if he ever will. It's a question that I have. My hunch, as I put in the article, is that he's going to grow and enter his athletic prime, and what looks to be a little bit of a disadvantage is going to turn into just enough, and he'll be okay there. But right now, he does not strike any fear whatsoever into the defense, which means that Cooper is running against. He has to break 2 tackles every single time if he's going to get anything more than 3 or 4 yards. And so the fact that like he didn't have 6 yards losses is honestly as impressive as what he did, because they lost the numbers game, and they the right phrasing of this, they were content to lose the numbers game. I mean, they knew they were losing the numbers game. You know, I mean, anybody can count to 6. It's not a hard. This is not like an insight or anything of that nature. And so I think if you're going to fight the way the defense was playing you, I think you have to pass the ball more. But then the flip side of this whole thing is San Diego State had 3 touchdowns, and all of them came on big plays or a turnover. And if there weren't big plays, San Diego State could not sustain any drives. And I think that's an issue.
I mean, I think we spent a lot of time the last 2 years talking about how the staff was using too many running backs, right? 4 or 5 running backs were getting 5+ carries a game, and we're like, okay, well, it's not working, so we got to pick one guy. Right now, it almost looks like they're completely the opposite.
Yeah.
Where Cooper, I think the 1 carry Cam Davis got, correct me if I'm wrong, was because Cooper got banged up and had to be taken off for a play.
That's right.
And Cam Davis came in and they gave him the ball. Otherwise, Cooper would have gotten every carry other than the running quarterback carries. Or I think, and even a Jayshon Polk, I think maybe had got an end around. But like, that's an extreme shift from one end to the other. And like, Lucky Sutton has Jalen Armstead and Lucky Sutton, who are supposed to be those bigger guys, like to kind of be, thunder and lightning, right? You hear that a lot, or at least bigger guys that can be more of the pounding guys, but they're not getting any carries at all. Right. And it looks like Cam Davis is now the backup because he's the one who came in on at least for that drive. And that brings up kind of like, at least on the offensive side, what I've noticed is like most of the offensive side outside of Ross Ulugalu-Masuli, and then you can say Javance because he moved up from 4th to 2nd and even got a start. Everyone else getting considerable time and snaps is guys that Sean Lewis brought in. Right?
On offense?
On offense. Defense has been more mixed. There's definitely, obviously, and we'll talk about defense. But on the offensive side, it seems like there's a big emphasis on all the guys that got brought in this year. With Cooper, with Danny O'Neal. We've talked about the receivers with Lewis Brown, Nate Bennett, Polk. Balin Brooks transferred. Mekhi Shaw can't get any wide receiver snaps. So there's definitely it's a considerable, I think, emphasis on playing the guys that they brought in on offense this year, and that's Sean Lewis wanting his guys. But I think from like Mekhi Shaw, I'm kind of perplexed that he doesn't get any more opportunities because he's proven that he can contribute, he can excel, he's got great hands. And I think, he's a guy that's maybe being missed out on there because, as much as, Lewis Brown has had big catches, I think there's more you would expect more from the receiving crew than we've gotten so far, because we hyped them up off season, talking about the talent level has grown exponentially, and now you kind of see, well, maybe it necessarily isn't as talented as we thought.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the way that I would phrase it is we're learning about the staff just along with everybody else. And I think one thing that it seems to be developing, and we'll see how it happens, is the staff, it seems like they're really trying to instill competitiveness in their players. And if you hear, if you ask for, the stat, like you ask them, hey, what do you like about this guy? He's competitive. What do you like about this guy? He's competitive. What do you like? Right? That's like the thing they say. And it seems to me that the guy who wins the snaps, the guy who they feel is the winner of their competition in practice, is going to play and the other guy's not. You know, to your point, you know, Christian Jones is somebody who is obviously playing, but they brought in Joe Borhan, and I asked Mike Schmidt about it. I said, hey, man, why did that guy go to the front? And he goes, oh, I was an educated guess. But that same kind of thing happened all throughout where they were at. And, you know, I would say that, like, Nate Bennett, the wide receiver, you know, he rotates the most with Mekhi Shaw, but it's probably 2-1, it seems like. Even a guy like Jordan Napier, who was a holdover, who's just been you know, and he had a drop. He had a drop this week. But see, that to me, like, that's what you do to be able to counteract and what defenses are doing to SDSU is you throw him a screen and you force the cornerback on the other side to be able to tackle him like 7 times, 8 times. And instead of giving the ball to Cooper 34 times, you give the ball to Cooper 23 times, and you run those little bubble screens on the outside, and you say, we're going to get 2 yards anyway from Cooper. Why don't we get the same thing from these wide receivers? And just and force the linebackers to kind of soften a little bit, force the safeties to kind of have a little bit more responsibility, and they can't always come up. But that's how you stop that, is if they're going to play 6 tight inside, then you get the ball to the perimeter, and you know, one guy in the way that they're going to cover things on the side, one thing they're going to have on the side, and, you know, because they're worried about crossing routes, one guy's going to be shallow, the other guy's going to be deep. So you block whoever that is, and you have a 3, 4, 5 yard gain. They ran it the first play of the game to Lewis Brown, and the 4 they went for 10 yards. Kevin and Joseph, thank you guys for being here. Kevin brought up another one. Joseph says he just tuned in. He one play doesn't make a game, but the missed field goals, man. You know, Joseph, I thank you for being here. Don't want to contradict you the moment that you got here, but technically missing 2 field goals is 2 plays, not 1. So it didn't even come down to 1 play. Does that make you feel better? I don't know. But Kevin is bringing up he's bringing up a man. So I'm at this game, one of the games that he's talking about. They're playing Fresno State, and we're at the Murph. And this is when the Raiders quarterback, no, he's not the Raiders quarterback anymore. Derek Carr was there with Fresno State. They're ranked, and San Diego State's going to win this game. And there's Fresno State fans, and they're packing up their stuff, and they just have this chip shot field goal. And I tell, man, it's I don't even want to mention the guy's name. McMorrow was the kicker's name, and he just couldn't kick field goals. And I told the Fresno State guys, I said, hey, your season's fine. He's gonna miss this kick. He hasn't been able to make a field goal, and sure enough, missed the kick, and Fresno State won in overtime. It was something else, man. It was something else. But anyway, so I
remember those days.
Yeah. Couldn't make a field goal. It definitely took you back there.
Should we move on to
a little better? Let's go.
Should we move on to defense?
Yes.
I mean, the defense has been, for the most part, a bright spot on this team. You've written about, and we talked about Trey White, obviously. You know, he had a monster game. I think he had 3 sacks.
3 sacks, 4 tackles for losses.
Yep. You know, the pressure that they were able to get on the quarterback, I think, was an added bonus, a boost. You know, they've got playmakers all over the field on defense, and you know, for the most part, you thought the defense was going to end up winning the game when the offense didn't score a point in the second half. You know, we talked about Bryce Phillips' interception. You know, there was, I don't know who forced a fumble, but Eric Butler got a fumble, almost returned it for a touchdown. Got called back because of hands to the face, I think, by McEwen.
That was Trey White's best play.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, okay. He
was unbelievable. He had 2 guys on him. I was like glued in from the press box on him, and the quarterback rolled right, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna strip sack him. Like, it's just, you could just see it like develop. He has no idea that White was about to be there. Yeah. JD Coffey was a monster. You know, Staley, they didn't tell us why he didn't travel, but he wasn't there. And JD Coffey stepped up, and he was all over, and I think, showed some of that athletic potential that we've been talking about for a long time, and didn't I think they attacked, which I thought was really good about the defense. But I personally, if I'm going to say anything that I thought Sean Lewis did really well, is I thought that he shifted the way the game was going. After the touchdown that brought it to 21-19, the margin, the time of possession was completely going the wrong way. And I think that after watching his defense have the same issue and then fold against Cal, have the same thing and fold against Oregon State, he shifted and he had longer drives, and they weren't doing Aztec fast. They were doing get up and that pause that they do, to rest their defense. And, I thought that was the right call. Now they needed to do something with the ball as well. You need to be able to do both, but they were getting 4-minute drives at a couple of those, and were close to it. And I thought that it helped the defense to stay fresh. It's just one of those things. They needed one more play. Dominic Oliver, we talked about the miss that he had, but man, he had an unbelievable 6-yard tackle for loss where Trey White had cramps, had to go off. Dominic Oliver comes in, beats his guy, gets to the running back, puts him on the ground, 6-yard loss, stop the drive. It was a great play, and you're just like, okay, they're just going to keep making plays. And then just the 4th and 7, they could not get off the field on that last one on that 4th and 7, and that cost them. But I thought it's hard to say, because honestly, I think this was the 3rd worst offense that they played, and they had their best against an FBS team. And I honestly thought, I thought it was great the runs that were there where they gashed them against Cal by attacking the edge rushers. I thought they, for the most part, fixed that. I thought they were stout against the run, and it didn't cost them in their passing. So yeah, I mean, the defense was a bright spot. But same thing. Talked to Trey White afterwards. I said, hey man, you guys kept answering. And he said, it doesn't matter. We didn't win. And, until some of those things start turning into victories, someone asked earlier if there was a moral victory, and yes, if there's a moral victory, if this was 14 years ago, but San Diego State has had 13 bowl eligible seasons in 14 years, and fair or not, if San Diego State does not turn their season around coming up here with Hawaii, people are going to have big questions, because San Diego State is expected to not be 1-4 or 1-3. They're just not expected to have that record. This is how it is.
Yeah, you mentioned Hawaii. That's the next game coming up, start of the conference season. We want to bring in our colleague, Johnny Olivieri.
How's it going, guys?
What's going on, Johnny? You wrote the game preview for the Hawaii game. You were at Sean Lewis's press conference. First of all, how's your night going?
Pretty good. I heard you guys talk about the Padre game. I was relaxing watching that, and then get to continue hearing about San Diego sports, listening to your show. So it's been a good night so far. Can't complain.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hawaii is 5:00 Saturday night. The 3 of us will be there, I believe.
Yes.
And Joseph may not be there.
This is the first question. We're gonna make this into a question. Why should Joseph show up to this Hawaii game?
Start a conference play. I think if you're going to kick off Mountain West play and you're looking at the teams in the Mountain West, obviously you want to beat the best to be the best. But I think that this Hawaii game is going to be a good way for them to kind of ease into that. The offense, we've seen SDSU play these teams that have, a couple great running backs and a good running game. And this is a little bit of a shift where this team is a pass-first team. Their quarterback led the Mountain West last season in passing yards and touchdowns. And this season already has over 8 touchdowns, 1,000 yards passing. He can run when he needs to. He has 75 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. So The Aztecs, I've mentioned it in my game previews before. When they hold an opponent to less than 200 yards rushing, they have a better chance of winning. And I think that against this opponent, that they should do that. But it'll be a matter of we'll see how these edges and the defensive line can produce pressure, and hopefully the secondary can come up with some turnovers. I think that's going to be key in this game. But I think if you're like Joseph here and you're reluctant about showing up to the game from what you've seen so far this season, I think that this has the potential to maybe be the kickstart of something good going into conference play.
I like it. So let me ask you this about it. I did see your stat. Is that a relevant stat? Because they don't run the ball. So like
right.
I mean if I will say this, if Hawaii runs for 200 yards, you will look like a genius, because it would be San Diego State's going to lose 60-0 if Hawaii runs for, unless they completely change their offense. But from what they've been doing, they're so pass heavy. Like, does that stat maybe not hold the relevance that it does in like every other game? Do you expect Hawaii to like borrow what Oregon State did? Because Central Michigan did. They ran more than they typically do. Cal ran more than they typically do. Do you expect Hawaii to kind of change who they are, or do you expect this to be a shootout?
It kind of depends how the game starts out. I wouldn't be surprised if, they have this film so far from the season. A few teams have been able to rush. The Aztecs of their 4 games have held 2 teams under 200 and 2 have gone over. So I think if you're Hawaii and you're thinking, you've mentioned it before, Paul, that everybody counters what they've seen so far. So if they've seen the way that some of these teams have had success rushing against the Aztecs, and think, okay, if SDSU prepares their defense for the pass, and we can come out and kind of surprise them with some runs early on in the game, then and it's successful, then I could see them doing that.
Joseph, but that's the chess match. No, that's the chess match. That's the answer.
Yeah, and it would only help open up the pass game. So I guess we'll have to find out Saturday night.
We have 2 very different answers to why Joseph should go to the game. Fernando says because we finally saw progress, and at least I now have optimism that they will finally put it together. Nice. Kevin has a different perspective that it can't be worse than the Nevada game last year.
Joseph, were you at the Nevada game? Joseph, were you at the Nevada game? We'll wait for
2 very different responses there. So we were at the Hawaii game in Hawaii last year, Paul and I, and from what I remember from the Hawaii offense and Shager, they dropped back and threw bombs.
Yeah,
like I can't remember seeing an offense throw so many like 25+ yard attempts.
Yes.
As they did. And they connected on a lot of them. I think they ended up scoring 34 points, right? It was 41-34. And a lot of that was like second and third quarter.
Yep.
Like bunched in together, because I think the defense got off to a good start in the first half. And then I think they had a few turnovers in the fourth quarter that helped them. But that they're gonna throw a lot of deep passes. Joseph says he was not. This is his first year as a student, so
it won't be worse. That's actually is not a bad answer, Kevin. It won't be worse. My enduring memory of that Hawaii game was I was doing pictures. So I was on pictures, and I was editing pictures sitting in the San Diego State section, because they didn't have their press box is so small, they didn't have like a place for me. So I'm just like in the stands, like editing pictures. And then after the press conference, Andre is doing the end of his recap, and he's doing it sitting in the stands. And we're like the only people in the entire stadium. Like everybody else is gone, and he's just doing it. But Johnny,
calling it a stadium is kind of
it's generous.
It's generous. Yeah.
Johnny, so talk to me a little bit about your keys to victory. You talked about it being turnovers. Why, if you're an Aztec fan, would you expect to come out on the top side of that turnover battle?
Well, from what we've seen so far, the defense has done a good job creating turnovers and giving the offense opportunities. Against a team like this, though, that passes more, it's going to come down to if the defensive line and those edge. I feel like I've mentioned edge in like every single one of my game preview articles, how important that it is, because it's been an important position going into this season, and guys like Trey White have paid off and proved that point. But if you're an Aztec fan and it's going to come down to turnovers, you're going to want to apply pressure to that quarterback, make him hopefully force some errant throws. We've seen that this secondary is hard hitting. So even if he's able to complete some passes, these guys can come in, gang tackle, force some fumbles, and get the turnovers. I think that the Aztecs will have a great shot. They've been losing the time of possession battle so far this season, which has been a bit of an issue. So I think that this is another game where they could that's something that they could sort of change going forward with the rest of the season, with a team that's passing and they're not as good at running the ball, or they just prefer to pass more. The offense could have more opportunities, and the defense could get more time on the sideline to be ready to come in and make those big plays that they'll need to.
The what kind of players, what kind of defense does Hawaii run? Who are some names we should keep an eye out for in terms of that?
Yeah, so they're pretty good up front rushing. The Jackie Johnson, he's their defensive end. He has 2 sacks, a forced fumble, 2 tackles for loss. They have a couple good DBs, and Jemiah Otis and Logan Taylor. They do a good job, and they have a great linebacker, Peter Manuma, if I'm pronouncing that correct. I believe he has, or Peter Manu is one of the cornerbacks. I apologize. Logan Taylor is the linebacker, but they do a good job of creating opportunities. They've given up some points this season, but kind of like the Aztec defense, but not as great yet. But they do a good job of getting their offense opportunities to go and score and put up points.
What do you think is the tell us your opinion on what we were discussing earlier about the fact that the offense is not like rotating players in. How would you come down on that idea, and I guess how they do the substitution patterns?
Yeah, the big one that kind of stood out to me was after that first game, and we saw, because you guys were talking about Cooper and how many touches he gets and how Cam Davis just came in for that one play. I think that's the most surprising thing to me. The receivers as well, like you had mentioned, Mekhi Shaw, I expected him to get some more action, but we should see in this game kind of how he'll get in the mix. But with the running back, I remember with Lewis during those before the season in those practices, he had referred to the skill sets of the running backs, the different skill sets that each one has, to being like a spice rack. Everyone's a little bit different. So in my mind, when I heard him say that, Cooper is a great back and he'll get a lot of touches, but then I expected him to kind of mix those spices in here and there and see, but he has yet to do that. And after that first game, I had asked him a question because I was curious longevity wise, like going forward, is Cooper going to be getting that many touches? And we've seen that he has, and you almost wonder how that will play in as they come down the stretch of the season, if they'll start mixing some of those guys in. But you hope that they're sort of ready for that point. If they're sitting there getting no touches or only one when Cooper goes out, it'll be interesting to see if later on down the season, if Cooper starts to wear down, they need to put those guys in. Are they going to be as game ready as they need to be?
And that's a great point. I think the other aspect of this whole thing, and it's challenging to know where the staff is on it, because there's never one factor for any decision, right? There's always 100 factors. But I think the other aspect of all of that is the transfer portal. There has been a very clear pattern, which is if you're at San Diego State or any comparable school and you have game film, you can transfer at least laterally, if not move up. But if you don't have game film, you might not find a spot.
Right. Yeah.
You might not be able to get an FCS offer if you have no film. And so that's another interesting part about it is, if you get, a guy like Cam Davis, and let's say this upcoming game, he gets 10 carries, and in those 10 carries, he gets 85 yards. Well, he might become a guy that people are saying, hey, I want that guy on my team,
Yeah.
And it's just, it's an interesting dynamic that to pretend that's not like part of the equation in one way or another. Now they might be saying, who cares? If it costs us a transfer, it costs us a transfer, but they still have to decide. They're still having to like put that as part of the equation. So I'm curious how that kind of stuff fits as well.
Joseph mentions Balen Brooks. Yeah, Balen Brooks and Bennett Walker announced, I believe, 2 weeks ago after the Cal game,
right?
Before the bye week. There were some roster changes yesterday. Wyatt Drager, defensive lineman, is no longer on the roster. This was his 5th year. He's a super senior. So we don't know whether he's looking to enter the portal and still play 1 year somewhere else, or whether he's retiring from football. And then Logan Tanner, who's a redshirt sophomore tight end. He was injured, but we have heard that he plans on entering the transfer portal in December as well. So some more guys that have left now that they played 4 games. With the whole redshirt thing with 4 games, you could do that. I think some people have already redshirted, so it may not play much of a factor with them. But that rule gives players an opportunity to play 4 games and then still transfer and still use a redshirt if they haven't used one yet. So I think that's something that's going on around college football. It's not a San Diego State problem, as we've talked about in the past. It's just something that's part of college football climate right now.
Absolutely. Johnny, good to see you, buddy.
What's that?
Yeah.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. Sorry, I got the fan on in here. It's right in my ear. But yeah, it's good to talk Aztec football, ready to get back out there Saturday at the stadium. That away game.
I know. It's been literally. We all get together every week because we're doing this kind of coverage and stuff like that. But it's been 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Since the last time that we were all together at Snack Game. So I'm looking forward to seeing you, shaking your hand. Trying to get in my questions at the press conference before you, so I don't look bad.
Yeah, it'll be good Saturday. Yep,
yeah, definitely. Bro. Thanks, man.
All right, Johnny. Have a good night.
Yep, you too, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Paul. We got one more topic to talk about.
Wait, we haven't covered everything?
No, let's talk a little bit about basketball and conference realignment.
Yeah.
Gonzaga and San Diego State will be in the same conference in 2026. How does that sound?
I think it sounds great. I think that it's hard to be able to. I don't know if people are seeing it the same way, but when news first broke that San Diego State was going to the Pac-12, people are sending me different things. People have different days. People jumped on it and said, it's the same thing as the Mountain West. What are they doing? And I was kind of with them. I was kind of like, okay, well, let me see a little bit. Let me understand a little bit. And the way that it just like put a complete stop to college football. And it was the only thing anybody was talking about. Still to this day, they're writing articles just to be able to like get the media bump that it provides. I mean, all of the the Mountain West and the Pac-12 should get back together. That's because their editor went to them and said, hey, we need you to do another article to get a lot of views because everybody only wants to know about the Pac-12 and what's going on with them. Look how much buzz UTEP going to the Mountain West cost.
Not much.
Not much. But it stopped college football. I mean, sincerely, did you watch Georgia, Alabama? Were you sleeping? I don't know where you were in Europe. But Georgia, Alabama was maybe the best college football game that has been played ever. It was unreal how cool of a game it was. And people aren't talking about it. They're talking about the Pac-12 and San Diego State and Gonzaga. And that buzz, that just the name, the Pac-12, I guess, they're acting as if USC never left. It's getting the same. I always wondered that when San Diego State would be beating Pac-12 teams, it didn't seem to matter, but Pac-12 teams would do mediocre things, and that would seem to be the media thing that would move it. Well, now San Diego State is in the Pac-12, and you're seeing the exact same thing. You're seeing that, I mean, the amount of buzz that it's created is just something else. And you know, Kevin puts the thing talking about the same thing that I just said. Kevin just put, I'm guilty of saying they were the same, but we all were. If you look at it structurally, it's more addition by subtraction, right? It's getting rid of those bottom teams. It's making the Aztecs not have to travel their basketball team, play Air Force, you know. It's those kinds of things, but it's not like it's the same, except the perception about it is different. So I would agree. I would even still argue that you have a point if you just say, you know, they're going to play Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, Utah State. Yeah, they're going to still play those same teams, but for whatever reason, it has completely gripped the country. Now, that said, and that's why we're really early, it's already proven that it is not the same because of the way the media buzz is. But if you're still on that, like, oh man, what's going to happen? They didn't get UNLV. UNLV said no. Air Force said no. Oh man, the AAC, what's going on? What's happening? I'm scared. Are they really as big time as they look like? Then Gonzaga rolls in and says, you know what? We think you're so big time that we flirted with going to the Big 12, didn't fit us. And now, but it fits us to not, that marriage with the Big 12 didn't work. Their commissioner for the Big 12 was really, really vocal. We want to see basketball is a big deal for us. Big 12, best basketball conference in the country. We want to add something like Gonzaga. We want to bring that in. That didn't work out. And now Gonzaga says what the Pac-12 is doing is big enough for us to leave our sweetheart deal in the WCC, where basically they guarantee that you're going to be in the semifinals every year of their tournament, playing a team that is gassed every year, when they're going to leave that to come be in the Pac-12 because it's big time.
I mean, yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense from a basketball perspective. You know, as Kevin points out, 6 of the 8 teams went to the tourney last year. I think 3 of them have been in the Elite 8 or the Final 4, if you factor in Oregon State in recent years. It's exciting playing Gonzaga home and away every year, assuming that it's a balanced schedule. You know, Gonzaga comes here to Viejas, I think in December or November. I have to look at the schedule, but you know, I went to Gonzaga to cover the game last year, and it was really cool. So having more opportunities to go there, I think would be cool. What that means for football, I mean, they still need to find at least another team for football. Where that's going to be, we'll see. I mean, I think the Memphis athletic director left a lot of gates open when he said, we didn't say no to the Pac-12. We said no to the deal that they offered us at the time, or something like that, right? Meaning, hey, hint, a better deal could maybe get us to come. So I think there's stuff out there. UNLV is always kind of floating out there, even though they did sign that. You know, saying Utah State obviously came over to the Mountain West. You've got other potential teams. I'm not really sure what to make of the whole Sacramento State thing, because that just a jump from FCS to the Pac-12, and something they posted something about how they collected $35 million in NIL funds in a day, which I find that hard to believe. Now Sacramento is a big market, but are they ready to make that jump? You know, these are all questions that I'm sure the Pac-12 athletic directors and the commissioner are debating. But I think for Gonzaga to have made this move, they must know something else is dropping that's going to elevate the Pac-12 even more. So that's my take on that. But I think from a basketball perspective, it's going to be a fantastic conference.
Well, let me go back with the interesting. Jeremy Darlow at Jeremy Darlow is a like a media kind of guy, consultant, VP, whatever. And he put out a tweet that said, interesting comparison between Mountain West X posts after their school signed back on versus the Pac-12's X announcement of their 6. Likes, the Pac-6 got 54,000. The Mountain West got 722. Views, the Mountain West got 94,000. The Pac-6, 5.6 million. Bookmarks, 26 for the Mountain West, 1,100 for the Pac-6. That's not even comparable, and that is without Gonzaga being there. That was just the original one, and I think we all saw that. You know, and Kevin brings up a good point. You know, that 6 of the 8 went to the tourney last year. He also brings up a good point that Gonzaga's getting a good deal. Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you give it a good deal? That you're not going to be able to, you know, if people were complaining about how maybe the Pac-12 undersold Memphis and stuff like that. Well, we're not going to do that to Gonzaga. And, you know, the media rights deals are such that they were probably offered a portion of a larger media rights with the Big 12, right? But that would be comparable to what they would be getting with the Pac-12. But I do think that football, you know, is going to be, they have an opportunity. Let me put it this way. I think they have an opportunity still out there if they could figure out a way to get Memphis, Tulane, at least 2 of those schools across the finish line. 1 of those schools, 2 of those schools, whatever it needs to be, across the finish line. If they do that, I think they will squarely separate themselves from the group of 6. They can call it that all they want, but they will be separate from it. So that's I think the home run kind of thing that they can do. But I think what this Gonzaga thing does is, even if they go and they pivot to, Fernando's talking about a Texas State, that seems to be a very logical one. Even if, you know, wherever they pivot to, you know, I think that this still is going to give enough cachet with everything around it that it's still going to be the premier one, even in football, because again, these things are not necessarily about factual things. It's about perception. You don't think that the people who are on the college football committee take television into account when choosing who they're going to be in there? You'd be naive to say that they're just doing it solely based off of the field. You know what I mean? And all of that kind of engagement, the fact that national media people connected to Memphis were saying, you're crazy. You're crazy for not accepting the deal. It is a lifeboat. Get out of your drowning in the AAC. Here is your lifeboat. The fact that that's out there shows that, and it's going to create this gap between the AAC and the Pac-12 going forward. And so I think it's fantastic. I do think that they're going to be able to get to 8. You brought up Sacramento State. Just as I wrote an article. That article that I wrote was talking about, like, are you all seeing how big of a deal this is? People are acting like this is a Power 5 move, even though it won't be. But they're approaching it like that. And so I reached out to the SAC-12, as the committee is called, and, you know, they gave me background information and things like that on what they were doing. But the thing I found the most amazing, Andre, is they said that the moment that the 4 schools, the moment that the 4 schools left the Mountain West, that's when this committee got formed. And within 24 hours, they had, we're going to build a football stadium, we're going to build a basketball stadium, we're going to get $50 million in NIL. And I pushed back. That was the only part that I pushed back on. I go, you mean to tell me that, like, you guys weren't meeting on the side, and then you were like, hey, this is the Pac-12. This will really be the publicity that we need. Because that's how I shaped it. You know, you edit my articles, Andre. Like, that's how I shaped it at first, because the person was, our timing didn't quite link up. And then I got that information and I went back and I edited and said, like, can you believe that? And in this move, to the opportunity to get into the Pac-12 has galvanized so much to where, I mean, look, if they're lying about $35 million, that's pretty easy to find out. And a lot of people who are lying about NIL stuff, which is a great segue to a question that we got from Joe earlier. But that stuff gets found out. And if it is seemingly what it's doing, which is to galvanize an entire community to try to get in there. I think it just points to the great place that San Diego State is in. And yeah, it's not done yet, but if there is this like conference realignment boxing match, the San Diego State and them, they came out, they showed that it was a match, and then it looked like they took a couple of blows, and they look in control of the fight again with Gonzaga coming in.
Yeah, I'm buying what you're selling, but I need to see how much the TV deal, the media deal shares per team, because I've seen some people report as low as 10 million a year. And like, if that's the case, and compared to Mountain West, like that's not that big of a jump. 15
More than
million,
double?
6 to 10 million
No, the TV deal's 4.
for the Mountain West.
The payout is 6, but that includes the basketball.
Okay.
So the TV deal is 4. Yeah, if it's double digits at all, and even if it's not, I mean, just access to the playoff itself.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are able to get those AAC schools, I don't think that they're as good as the Big 12. I don't think that they're as good as the ACC. But just like I don't think the Big 12 or the ACC are as good as the Big 10 and the SEC, I think there's a gap there. If the goal of having like an automatic spot for the highest group of 5 team, if they're able to get those AAC schools, they're breaking the spirit of that rule, because the Pac-12 will be the de facto champion 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10. And in that regard, in still trying to keep access, maybe instead of getting 4, they'll get 3.5, and they'll share one between the Big 10, and they'll give one more automatic, which would further dilute the Big 12 and the ACC. A lot of things that are in front of you. But can we sign off with Joe's question? This is a good one.
Yeah, Joseph says, if this is too off track, I understand it's not.
Nope.
But what do you guys think of the UNLV quarterback situation with the impacts of NIL seemingly causing some teams issues? I have a lot of thoughts on this. I guess my first thought is I'm surprised this isn't happening more across the country. That's my first thought. Second thought, there's a lot of differing accounts, a lot of he said, she said, when it comes from the quarterback, his dad. I think his dad tweeted out a bunch of stuff. His dad or uncle or somebody related to him. And then his agent, Marcus Cromartie. And then obviously the school and the NIL collective put out statements. I think what the most interesting thing about the schools and the NIL statements is they didn't deny that a coach promised him $100,000 to commit there. I think that's interesting, right? If a coach had never done that, I think that would have been in the statement up front and center. We never promised him $100K. That is not written there. I think obviously you can't say that a coach promised that, because that's illegal, right? That's a pay to play, right? Because schools aren't allowed to pay players directly. So, and then I also heard his former coach from Holy Cross talk about him. I don't know if you saw that video about how this guy passed up $500K offers to go to UNLV because of the fit, because he trusted them, right? He didn't leave because he was like, suddenly I want more money, or someone's throwing more money at him. That's one perspective. I'm not saying that's he's 100% truthful, but I followed that. To me, I think it's a trust issue from the quarterback, right? Even an assistant coach, if an assistant coach said, "Hey, well, you'll get $100K or more if you commit to us," and then you believe that and you go and play there, and then that money doesn't come out and they deny it, you lose trust in that coaching staff. Now, blame the agent for not getting that written before a commitment, right? You should have that discussion with your agent. And apparently he's not even licensed to be an agent in Nevada either, which is a double whammy on that part. So I think to summarize, like, errors were made on both sides, but I think at the heart of it is you have a quarterback that was a starting quarterback. He felt like he was lied to, and that they did not fulfill their commitments, as he made representations, as he said, and he felt like he did not want to play for them anymore. Now, you can make the argument that in that situation, you're letting your teammates down. But as we've seen, this is a business. It's a individual coaches make individual decisions, players make individual decisions that's best for them, and he made that decision. I'm not saying I agree with it or I would have done it, but like you could see that there's a trust that was broken in his mind, and he made the decision that he wanted to move on.
I think you said it really, really well. I did see that there was a running back from UNLV who put out a very similar sounding reason why he's also transferring. I think that as much as like we're gonna have innuendo, and who knows what actually is gonna get solved. I think at the end of it, if this is what UNLV is doing, if they're doing anything underhanded, it's going to show in the recruits that they're going to get going forward. The flip side of it is, if UNLV isn't doing anything, that's going to be easily explained. But to your point, Andre, contracts would do a world of good if this was all just over the table and everybody just put here's what the contract is. You want to sign it or not? And then you went from that. Kind of coming full circle with this conversation as we're wrapping up. How amazing would we feel about Danny O'Neil or any of the San Diego State quarterbacks going and playing Fresno State and destroying them? We'd be like, this guy's it. And UNLV did it with like their third QB.
Yeah.
And I think, UNLV's coach Odom, who is somebody that we've talked about as somebody who you're going to expect is not going to be at UNLV for long. People are going to compare him to Sean Lewis because he went to UNLV that didn't have a thing of winning, and he didn't win. And because and then at UNLV they didn't win, and then right away he turned them around. They were in the Mountain West Championship. Yes, last year. They are ranked this year. They were unranked going into Fresno State, right? They were ranked and then they became unranked, and then they just destroyed them in the middle of this firestorm with their QB and the running back leaving, and they still were able to like keep the locker room together and go and like defeat a rival. It's really impressive, and the fact that they have like such a wealth of quarterbacks. I mean, obviously, their quarterback who led them to the championship game last year is the backup at USC because he got a big deal. And so I think people are going to, for better or for worse, they're going to compare Lewis to Odom. Now, is it a fair comparison? Is it a fair comparison? Odom was a head coach in the SEC prior to going to UNLV. And so, maybe he had a better resume and a better pedigree and things of that nature, but you're going to have expectations that they're going to point to that and say, look, he did. And they do in all the comments and things that people make about it. So I think that was another big part of it is it didn't seem to hurt UNLV on the field, at least for that one game. And they play Syracuse on Friday at home.
Is it Odom? Is it Odom or is it Brennan Marion who's running the offense? Who interviewed for the head coaching job at San Diego State?
Yeah, I was altogether unimpressed with him. So I don't know.
But if he's calling the plays, he's running the offense. It's his offense that he created. Not only his offense.
Well, we'll see. And obviously, they're both going to be well paid. Maybe Marion even gets the opportunity to have that job at UNLV. Honestly, the parts of Marion, being interviewed and all of those things kind of smelled to me as somebody who was trying to get his name out there. Like, look, I'm a candidate. And who knows how strong of a candidate he actually was. But who knows? It might not. We'll see. But regardless of what is happening, what is transpiring, right? That's going to be a comparison because they're in the same conference. general kind of underachieving feel as far as, like being in Las Vegas and then, San Diego the last couple of years with Snapdragon. So a lot there, but I thought that's another big part of that story is that, they were able to weather that and still win. And we talk about, developing a winning culture and how that takes time. And obviously San Diego State couldn't do the things to win that a team like Central Michigan, who has a head coach, they've been there for 6 years, was able to do. And they were able to make those plays. And I think that's the next step for the Aztecs. And honestly, Joseph, if I was going to answer your question that you asked to Johnny about not being willing to show up or any of those kinds of things, I would say the reason you're going to show up is because you want to say that you were at the game when San Diego State figured out how to turn things around. And I think that's what's going to happen on Saturday.
There you go. Another variation of the answer. Just to point out, Matt's school, like they were 3-0, but like it wasn't like he was like throwing for a bunch of yards or running for a bunch of yards. Like it could actually potentially help UNLV if they have a better quarterback and a better talented quarterback who was the backup and now might be younger but might be more talented. And School was like that, 50-year senior who was like the guy who had the experience, didn't turn it over, and maybe they're better off for it. Maybe everybody's better off for it. But as I said, I'm surprised that you don't see this happen more often with NIL deals. Verbal promises don't come to fruition, and we've seen it. We'll start seeing it when they have signed contracts that they don't get fulfilled because of loopholes or exceptions or whatever. In this case, this was like didn't even get signed. It was a verbal thing,
right.
Which is, Matt's school doesn't have a legal standing contractually because it was not executed. But like, as I said, that faith and that trust you have in that staff, that gets eroded too, to an extent. But that's, I think we beat that one enough. Anything else we need to talk about before we close this out?
I want to be able to close this out feeling like I've convinced somebody of something in my life. Joseph, one last comment from Joseph. Heck yeah, you make a convincing argument. So we'll see you at Snapdragon on Saturday. Kevin Wilson says go Aztecs. Appreciate you guys helping keep greasing the wheels and stuff with the questions and comments and all that kind of stuff. Invaluable. Andre, welcome back, buddy. Look forward to seeing you, brother.
Yeah, I'll see you on Saturday. I'll see everybody else on Saturday. Hopefully by the Warrior Walk in River Park block party that the school is putting on. As always, if you can like or subscribe to the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. The audio version will be up on Spotify and Apple tomorrow if you want to listen to it. Kevin says, and Padres.
Yeah.
Great show. Thank you so much, guys. As always, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys next time.